Welcome to this episode of Criminal Mischief, the Art and Science of Crime Fiction. I'm D.P. Lyle. We've talked about a lot of stuff on past shows, and today I want to talk more about the writing of crime fiction, and particularly I want to talk about mood and tone, which are critical parts of any literary project, but particularly in crime fiction because mood and tone set the stage for the entire story. Setting the mood and tone in crime fiction should be done up front. You should do it in the beginning of the story. You should give the reader the information that they need in order to understand what the story is about and how it's going to be told, and what's the mood of the story and the tone of the story, and what should they feel about it. They should know what type of world they're entering. Is this a futuristic, fantastical world? Is this historical, way back in the day? Is it modern crime fiction? It should give you the setting and the feel and what kind of story and what kind of world the reader is entering. It might also give some character insights, like I said, and reveal setting, and it will also reveal the voice of the writer, and this is what draws the reader into the story, is the voice. Now, teaching voice is almost impossible, and teaching mood and tone is almost impossible because there are so many rules involved, and indeed there are no rules. It's whatever works. And like a work of art, the voice and the mood and the tone are in the eyes of the beholder. How do you describe the Mona Lisa? It's a homely woman smiling. No, it's much more than that. But it's a feeling, it's a mood, it's a tone, it's what the reader or the viewer gets from it. So you can't describe it. So you can't really describe it. You can only see it. And when you know it, when you see it, you will know it. When you feel it, you will say, okay, this speaks to me. So what's the difference between mood and tone? Well, tone is the author's attitude. Is the author writing this a straight up police procedural? Is it comedic? Is it dark? Is it cozy, warm, and fuzzy? Is it literary? Is it historical? All of these tones, the tone of the writer is what the writer brings to the story. So what's the mood? Well, the mood is the atmosphere and the emotion that is created in the reader, what the reader feels when they enter this world of the story, and what they feel as they move along through the events that happen here. So the tone reflects the author's attitude toward the tale, and the mood is how the reader feels about the story. Now, these can be revealed, and we're going to look at some examples, and you will see all this. They can be revealed through all kinds of things, such as word choice and sentence structure. Is the writing formal or informal? What's the point of view? Is it close first person? Is it third person? Is it objective or is it subjective? Is the writer reporting the story, or is the reader drawn into the story as the main character, which is a much more subjective feel? What's the rhythm of the writing? What's the setting of the story? What's the action that takes place? What time frame are we talking about here? How's the dialogue? What is the voice of this story? In short, all the tools that you have available in your storytelling arsenal are in play when you're talking about tone and mood. It's how you tell the story and how the reader perceives the story. So, and like any other fiction, crime fiction's not special here, any fiction, the mood and the tone runs the gamut. It can be dark or light. It can be noir or cozy. It can be suspenseful. It can be humorous, quirky, creepy, supernatural. You name it, just about everything is in play. So like I said, you can't describe art. You can only feel art. So let's get a feeling for the tone and the mood of some famous stories. Let's start with this. When I got home, I mixed a stiff one and stood by the open window in the living room and sipped it and listened to the groundswell of traffic on Laurel Canyon Boulevard and looked at the glare of the big, angry city hanging over the shoulder of the hills through which the boulevard had been cut. Far off, the banshee wail of police or fire sirens rose and fell, never for very long completely silent. 24 hours a day, somebody is running. Somebody else is trying to catch him. Out there in the night of 1,000 crimes, people are dying, being maimed, cut by flying glass, crushed against steering wheels or under heavy tires. People are being beaten, robbed, strangled, raped, and murdered. People are hungry, sick, bored, desperate with loneliness or remorse or fear, angry, cruel, feverish, shaken by sobs. A city no worse than others, a city rich and vigorous and full of pride, a city lost and beaten and full of emptiness. It all depends on where you sit and what your own private score is. I didn't have one. I didn't care. I finished the drink and went to bed. Wow. Well, this is from the great Raymond Chandler, and the story is The Long Goodbye. This is the opening of it. So you get a sense of the tone. The tone is, this is a sarcastic person that we're going to be following through this, someone who is cynical, someone who understands the gritty nature of the world. It's written in a very matter-of-fact tone. It's written in a very negative tone. This is going to be a dark story. This is a person who we're going to follow through this story, who is a realist, if nothing else, and who has had troubles with the angry city. And the city, the setting, this is Los Angeles, of course. Laurel Canyon gives that away. This could be any big city, as he says. But so you get the setting and you get the tone. And what's the mood? Well, the reader kind of comes away from this like, uh-oh, we're entering this dark world. There's some bad stuff is going to happen. We don't know who this person is yet. We don't know what their station in life is yet. We don't know whether if it's male or female. We don't know the person's name. We don't know the occupation. We don't know any of that stuff. But what we do know is this is a very cynical person living in a very dark world, and we're going to follow this person down a path that is filled with trouble and trepidation. This creates that mood. Now let's look at something entirely different. It was very late, and everyone had left the cafe except an old man who sat in the shadow of the leaves of the tree, made against the electric light. In the daytime, the street was dusty, but at night the dew settled the dust, and the old man liked to sit late because he was deaf, and now at night it was quiet, and he felt the difference. Well, this is from Ernest Hemingway, A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. You see the mood and the tone on this are entirely different. This is a very literary work. Obviously, it's Hemingway. We have this old man sitting there. This is almost a slice of life story, but it creates an intriguing question, and the reader is left with the feeling that this is a lonely old man who's sitting alone and listening to the night that he can't hear. We want to know more about him. We want to follow this story. We want to get a better feel for who this person is and what he's all about. Now let's look at one that's a little more straightforward, in your face. Again, Los Angeles is the setting. Again, it's crime fiction. And this is the great Michael Connelly in The Concrete Blonde, which of all of his wonderful, wonderful books, this may be his absolute best. And see what you think about the tone of Connelly's writing and the mood that this creates in you as the reader. From The Concrete Blonde, this is the opening. The house in Silver Lake was dark, its windows as empty as a dead man's eyes. Wow, I love that. It was an old California craftsman with a full front porch and two dormer windows set on the long slope of the roof. But no light shone behind the glass, not even from the doorway. Instead, the house cast a foreboding darkness about it that not even the glow from the street light could penetrate. A man could be standing there on the porch, and Bosch knew he probably wouldn't be able to see him. "You sure this is it?" he asked her. "Not the house," she said. "Behind it. The garage. Pull up so you can see down the drive." Bosch tapped the gas pedal and the Caprice moved forward and crossed the entrance to the driveway. "There," she said. Bosch stopped the car. There was a garage behind the house with an apartment above it. The wooden staircase up the side, light over the door, two windows, lights on inside. Okay, Bosch said. They stared at the garage for several minutes. Bosch didn't know what he expected to see. Maybe nothing. The horse perfume was filling the car, and he rolled his window down. He didn't know whether to trust her claim or not. The one thing he knew he couldn't do was call for backup. He hadn't brought a rover with him, and the car was not equipped with a phone. What are you going to... There he goes, she said urgently. Bosch had seen it, the shadow of a figure crossing behind the smaller window. The bathroom, he guessed. He's in the bathroom, she said. That's where I saw the stuff. Bosch looked away from the window and at her. What stuff? I checked the cabinet, when I was in there, just looking to see what he had. A girl has to be careful. And I saw all the stuff, makeup shit. Mascara, lipsticks, compacts and stuff. That's how I figured it was him. He used all that stuff to paint them when he was done, killing them. Well, the tone here obviously is very procedural, very matter of fact, which is classic Michael Connelly. He writes probably the best police procedurals there are, obviously besides creating great characters. Both of these characters, we know Bosch well, but this prostitute that he's with is a pretty interesting character too. And the tone is like very matter of fact. The writing is very clean, very very Hemingway-esque almost, very simple, in your face. You get the picture very clearly of what's going on and what's happening here. But what's the mood? Well, the mood obviously is noir. I mean, here's this cop sitting with this prostitute looking at some guy's house who is obviously a multiple murderer, a serial killer type who has issues. He has a signature. He apparently kills his victims and paints them up with makeup. And when she says that's what he's done, killing them, it means there's been more than one. So this is the mood of this story is one of darkness, classically noir. This could have easily been written by Raymond Chandler or Dashiell Hammett, but is written by Michael Connelly, which is the modern day version of those giants. Let's look at something now 180 degrees away. This is from The Restaurant at the End of the Universe by Douglas Adams. Not necessarily crime fiction, but it's fiction. In the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people angry and been widely regarded as a bad move. So the tone of the writer here is one of humor and sarcasm, and the mood that it creates in the reader is pretty much the same, that they know that this is going to be a quirky story, that it could be science fiction. We don't really know, but it sure sounds like it could be. But it's light, it's funny, it's sarcastic, it's got that tone to it, that mood to it, that you feel like, okay, we're in for a fun ride here. This is going to be wild. Now, to do a whiplash, let's move in an entirely different direction. See what you think of this. In the middle, there's a little skip in the middle of this whole first section, but I'll let you know. The village of Holcomb stands on the high wheat plains of western Kansas, a lonesome area that other Kansans call out there. Some 70 miles east of the Colorado border, the countryside with its hard blue skies and desert clear air has an atmosphere that is rather more far west than middle west. The local accent is barbed with a prairie twang, a ranch hand nasalness, and the men, many of them, wear narrow frontier trousers, Stetsons, and high-heeled boots with pointed toes. The land is flat, and the views are awesomely extensive. Horses, herds of cattle, and a white cluster of grain elevators rising as gracefully as Greek temples are visible long before the traveler reaches them. And then we skip down. Until one morning in mid-November 1959, few Americans, in fact, few Kansans, had ever heard of Holcomb. Like the waters of the river, like the motorist on the highway, and like the yellow train streaking down the Santa Fe tracks, drama in the shape of exceptional happenings had never stopped here. The inhabitants of the village, numbering 270, were satisfied that this should be so. Quiet, content to exist inside ordinary life, to work, to hunt, to watch television, to attend school socials, choir practice, meetings of the 4-H club. But then, in the earliest hours of that morning in November, a Sunday morning, certain foreign sounds impinged on the normal nightly Holcomb noises, on the keening hysteria of the coyotes, the dry scrape of scuttling tumbleweed, the racing, receding wail of locomotive whistles. At the time, not a soul in sleeping Holcomb heard them. 4 shotgun blasts that all told ended 6 human lives. But afterward, the townspeople, theretofore sufficiently unfearful of each other to seldom trouble to lock their doors, found fantasy recreating them over and again, those somber explosions that stimulated fires of mistrust in the glare of which many old neighbors viewed each other strangely and as strangers. This is obviously from In Cold Blood, Truman Capote's masterpiece. A great book, and if you haven't read it, you should. It's brilliant. But what's the tone here? Well, the tone here is obviously literary. The word choice, the sentence structure, everything. Capote was a literary writer, and he brought his literary talents to this true crime, or what he called faction, fictionalized true crime, what we would call creative nonfiction today. But he created this genre basically. But he brings um, a very direct tone to this. This is almost a Michael Connelly-esque, a procedural thing, a thing where he's presenting the facts to you, but he's also interpreting the facts. He's also giving you an insight into this isolated community that some horror has visited and its effect on the inhabitants of this small community. It's all very straightforward. It's all very cleanly done, but you get the feeling. So what's the mood? What is that feeling? Well, the feeling is that this is going to be a dark, dangerous story. A shotgun blast, 6 people dead, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, there were 4 people killed, and then, of course, the 2 killers ended up getting executed for it much later. Dick Hickok and Perry Smith. Um, but he creates this mood that this is small town America. This is where people leave their doors unlocked. This is where things are quiet. This is where the most exciting things that happen at night is tumbleweeds rolling around and a train going by. Nothing happens in Holcomb, Kansas until it does. And then this darkness settles on this town. And you get this foreboding mood, this heaviness. You know that this is going to be a nasty, nasty story. And you can't look away. You can't look away. Uh, it's right there. It's in your face, and you cannot look away. Now, let's look at another mood. I love this. If you haven't read Vicki Hendricks, you should. And this is from one of my favorite books of hers. And Vicki does not pull punches, as you will see. She is in your face. Her tone is sarcastic, dark, and gritty. Hank was drunk and he slugged me. It wasn't the first time, and I picked up the radio and caught him across the forehead with it. It was one of those big boom boxes with a cassette player and recorder, but I never figured it would kill him. We were sitting in the front of the fan listening to country music and sipping Jack Daniels, calling each other toots like we both enjoyed. And all of a sudden the whole world changed. My old man was dead. I didn't feel like I had anything to do with it. I didn't make that choice. I spent a few days in jail till the law decided I wasn't to blame. It was Hank's long record got me out. He was known to the cops. Afterwards, I went on drinking and missing that son of a bitch like hell. There were several months I don't know what I was doing. He had a terrible mean streak, but we were good together, especially when we got our clothes off. At some point, I woke up from a blackout and was in the hospital. I had vague memories of some asshole buying me drinks and him on top of me in a musty-smelling car. There were flashes of fist and the sound of it against my jaw, but I wasn't sure whose fist it was. I could have been mixing up another time. The nurse told me I looked like I'd been kicked, beat up so bad I was lucky to be alive. I don't know why I believed her about being lucky, but after they patched me up and dried me out for a while, I was ready to give it a go. Really try to make myself alive for the very first time. It was a big mistake. Well, The tone here obviously is gritty and dark and humorous and sarcastic, and it implies that our narrator is unreliable because of her bad habits and her quirky view of the world. So she may not be telling us the truth all the time, but at least she's telling us the truth as she sees it. And so the tone here kind of sets all that. And what's the mood that it sets in you, the reader? Well, if this is going to be a quirky, off the wall, oddball story about people who are maybe on the fringe of society, or at least have alcohol problems, let's put it that way, and maybe have relationship problems. So we're going to follow this wonderful character through this story because we want to know what kind of mischief is coming next, and we worry about her. It creates a mood of worry, of mistrust of her world, that something bad is going to happen to her. So let's go with one more, and see if you can see the mood and the tone in this. This is from my third Dub Walker book, Run to Ground. I can still smell him. Martha Foster inhaled deeply and closed her eyes. Tim stood just inside the doorway and looked down at his wife. She sat on the edge of their son's bed, eyes moist, chin trembling, as were the fingers that clutched the navy blue Tommy Hilfiger sweatshirt to her chest. It had been Stephen's favorite. He had slept in it every night the first month until Martha finally pried it away long enough to run it through the wash. Behind her, a dozen photos of Stephen lay scattered across the blue comforter. A proud Stephen in his first baseball uniform. A 7-year-old Stephen grinning, upper left front tooth missing. Soft freckles over his nose, buzz-cut hair, a blue swimming medal dangling around his neck. A playful Stephen, sitting next to Martha at the backyard picnic table, face screwed into a goofy expression, smoke from the Weber barbecue rising behind them. Tim remembered that day. He remembered the day he snapped the picture. Labor Day weekend, 6 months before that day. He squeezed back his own tears and swallowed hard. Martha shifted her weight and twisted toward the photos. She laid the sweatshirt aside and reached out, lightly touching an image of Stephen's face. The trembling of her delicate fingers increased. She said nothing for a moment, and then, "I'm taking these." Tim walked to where she sat and pulled her to him, her cheek nestling against his chest, her tears soaking through his t-shirt. He kissed the top of her head. "He's gone," Martha said. "Everything's gone, or will be." Well, I'll leave it to you to decide this. I don't want to critique my own work, what the tone and the mood here is, but I think you can feel it. I think you can feel that this is going to be a dark story, that something bad has happened to this couple, and we want to know what, and we want to go forward with this story. So again, like voice, mood and tone are hard to teach. It's hard to say, well, you do this and then this and then this and then this pops out the end. It doesn't work that way. It's art. And as art, it has to be appreciated by the reader. It has to come from the reader's understanding and feeling, and how the words and the sentence structure and the tone of the writer's writing hits them. It's very personal. And so some of these you may like, some you may not. But if you want to learn mood and tone, you've got to read a lot. And then if you want to be able to use this skill, you have to write a lot. But that's true of all kinds of writing. I suggest, you go to a bookstore or the library, pull a bunch of books off the shelves and read the first 10 pages. You will get various moods and tones of stories, and some of them will speak to you and some of them won't. Some of them will make you want to continue reading, and others will say, well, that was a nice little exercise, but I'm done with this. Regardless, you can also go to Amazon and go to Look Inside. That's one of the best features of their website, is that you can actually go there and read the first few pages of stories, and you can sit down in a couple of hours and rummage through tens and tens of books, and you can start getting a feel for mood and tone. And then lastly, the last advice I'd give, if you're looking at this as well as voice, is to get out of your own way. Tell the story the way you want to tell it. If you want it to be dark, write it that way. If you want it to be procedural, write it that way. If you want it to be humorous, or you want it to be quirky, you want it to be whatever, you sit down and write your story the way you want it to be written. And then other people come along and say, hey, I like the tone of this writer, and I love the mood that this writer has created for this particular story. And remember, both tone and mood vary not only from genre to genre, but from story to story, because you're beginning to create a fictional world, and you do it with the tone of your writing, how you write the story, how you tell the story, and through the mood that it creates in the reader. So, as usual, go to my website, dplylemd.com, and you'll see the show notes there, and you can read all of these examples in their entirety again, and you can look at the notes for this show. So that concludes this one, and until next time, this has been D.P. Lyle, and this is Criminal Mischief, the Art and Science of Crime Fiction. Until next time.